Welcome to Module 2, the Literature Review. This module runs July 24th through Sunday, July 30th. Today I'd like to share with you the biggest aha that strikes people once they learn about the Literature Review. And that aha is that there really isn't any earth-shattering revelations that is totally new to the scholarly literature. This is because in the process of producing scholarly literature, there have been a proposed research study that has been vetted by several committees. Then there has been the research process that has been done. Then there has been a study and a review. Then there has been a submission for publication, which is also peer-reviewed. And then finally, when it hits mainstream, there is the published article, which is what you or I would see. But in the meantime, there has been a very lengthy process that has all been in the public eye with regard to whatever topic the latest, I'm not going to say newest, but I'm going to say latest research on a topic may be. So by the time that you search through all the literature for that one or two nuggets of gold which would reveal the latest findings, that information in some ways might be considered old. Isn't that incredible when you're thinking about, well, how old are the articles that I can use for this proposal? And typically students ask me, well, does it need to be less than 10 years old? Does it need to be less than 5 years old? How old can literature be? Well, that's the debate or part of the discussion that I think is so interesting and is the subject of one of our discussion questions in Module 2. What I find particularly interesting, and I think you might also, is that especially with regards to a question that has a historical context, that has a lengthy history, that has seen a significant amount of evolution in the thinking process, especially when you're thinking about issues like education, and that the ideas about how education is to be delivered and the purpose of education, as those evolve with time, the older literature becomes less relevant and the newer literature is current. And so part of the issue then becomes, and the question then becomes, is how relevant and how valuable is that historical literature? So that's why we come up with the question, do I rule anything out that's older than 10 years? Well, don't just automatically say yes, because that's the typical logic or the typical rule of thumb. My point that I contend is that the value of older research is it shows us what information is not correct. It shows us what things have been disproven, what things have been found that are not relevant. And to me, and my style of research, knowing what not to look at, knowing what roads or what paths to not follow when I have options, is a tremendous tool or a tremendous way of saving me a lot of time in crafting a problem statement that or guiding questions that will provide the direction that my research proposal will follow. So to me, when someone asks me, well, at what point do I cut it off? I ask, at what point do you want to start? Because the idea is that with a proposal, you are hoping to craft a study that might fill a gap in the literature, meaning a missing piece of literature that somebody in the past has not thought to do or may have not done in a similar manner that may yield some new results. So this is where I think it's very valuable to be familiar with the older literature, and I think it's useful to know that literature, to review it, and you may even be able to take some contextual hints from it. But what you might be looking for in terms of a unique or original contribution to the scholarly literature is that you might find a question, or you might find a tiny niche that has not yet been fully researched, where your idea or your new take on an old idea may yield something insightful that has not yet been thought of or has not yet been covered in the literature. The place that you might find this, and I think is the second big aha for novices in research, is to look at a section of published research that says something to the effect of suggested areas to research in the future. And so typically this is at near or at the end of a published research, where the authors, upon retrospect, may suggest to future readers that if the research would be to be extended or to be redone, that they might have suggestions for future research, that someone like you could come along and pick up on that and say, oh, well, there's an insight, and maybe this would provide me a starting place where the last or the latest scholarly contribution had left off. And that's where the aha and the revelation of where to find what's next, where to find what is new, where to find what hasn't been covered, and thereby provides you the genesis, or at least the opportunity to think about proposing a way to research something that hasn't been covered yet. Now, with regard to that and this process of the literature review, I would like to also remind you that the process of researching and adding to the body of knowledge does not require that you solve the problem under consideration. It really is about making a contribution to the literature that everyone else is trying to solve a problem about. So as a team, as a community, when you review the literature, you'll see that there are many, many people who, as a community like you, want to solve a particular social problem or a particular issue with regard to whatever topic you may be studying. And in doing so, if you could create even a tiny bit of new knowledge as your contribution, then you have pushed the ball forward for the benefit of everybody who is interested in making a contribution to the same topic or area of need about which you care. So, in effect then, through the literature review and learning what others have done, you can then build on the shoulders of others to advance the scholarly knowledge. If only by the width of a hair, you have still advanced that scholarly knowledge a significant amount. And so when you say, wow, just the width of a hair, that tiny fraction, that little bit, is that really acceptable? Is that really considered a contribution? And the answer to that is yes, because when all of us work together and we all chip in a little bit of knowledge in an area that is unique and original to us, then the cup begins to fill up, and eventually the knowledge runs over when everybody contributes. And that is a context or an idea that I wanted to share with you in this Module 2 video, so you have a metaphor of a cup filling with knowledge, and then the knowledge literally running over the edge of the cup, where we eventually arrive at that trite cliche, the cup runneth over. It's an interesting metaphor that is easy to grasp, so I like trying to explain how the literature provides this opportunity for you to think about an original contribution and how your proposed study might make even a tiny difference or tiny contribution that improves the knowledge that everybody is sharing. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in the discussions, especially the historical research discussion, which I think is a lot of fun. Bye.